Welcome into episode 394 of the Skate Podcast. I am Brian DeFelice, joined by Scott McLaughlin, Xerxes Prue, and of course, we have Bridget Prue. For those that are not watching on YouTube, Xerxes is Bridget's cat, and he is front and center, or he was supposed to be Bridget, and he got a little camera shy.
He knew that that's what we wanted, so he moved, and that is exactly the personality that he has, and now he's right here, and he's, yeah.
Classic pet behavior.
That's classic cat.
My parents' dog does that too, Archie. Like, he'll be in like the most adorable pose, and you'll be like, "Let me just get my camera," and he's gone.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Well, he's gonna be here probably the whole time.
We're glad to have Xerxes as always. Bridget and Scott, couple of polar opposite performances since our last recording between the Bruins and the Devils. And then the Bruins come home on a back-to-back to play the Senators. Let's get right into the opening shifts. Too much different results, but we'll break it all down.
Yeah, I'll go first because that basically is my opening shift, where it's like this 5-1 loss to the Devils on Wednesday is just Morgan Geeky called it embarrassing after the game, and that's exactly what it was. Like, they just got run off the ice, completely outplayed, defensive mistakes all over the place. Penalty kill was terrible, gave up 3 power play goals, not generating much offensively. And it's the kind of game where, like, afterwards you're like, yep, time to sell, retool, whatever you want to call it. Like, this team's obviously going nowhere. And then they come back very next night and get a really good 60-minute win over the Ottawa Senators, 2-0. I thought their 5-on-5 defense was very good. Penalty kill goes 4 for 4, including killing off 32 seconds of a 5-on-3. Jonas Korpisalo, really good in net. Getting the start with Jeremy Swayman a little bit banged up. Sounds like he'll probably be back for Saturday. And, offensively, they created chances. I know, it's one goal, really, and then the empty netter from Pastrnak with 5 seconds left. But they had chances. They had offensive zone time. And it's like, it just looked like a good team win. And you go, well, if they can just do that consistently, like, maybe they can still do something this season. Pastrnak had a quote along those lines after the game, saying like they proved to themselves that they can win that way. Obviously, as we all know, the problem is they just haven't done it consistently. And, if they did play like Thursday night, 80% of the time, we wouldn't be talking about retool and selling. Like, we'd be talking about, okay, how do you add to a team that has a good defensive identity and plays the right way and brings a good effort every night? So we'll see if they can build off it, but I think we're all right to be skeptical because they've tricked us too many times.
Yeah, and so my opening shift has to do with the lineup that they've been running out. And like, I know it was a bad loss against New Jersey and the effort looked like it wasn't there. And then all of a sudden they're able to win with a similar lineup that's without McAvoy, without Lindholm. Swayman's out and they're playing Korpisalo, and we can get into, if Swayman's banged up or what's going on. But they're playing with a bunch of guys from Providence. They're playing with Callahan in the lineup. They're playing with Letary in the lineup. They had Max Jones in the lineup. He only played 5 minutes, but anyway, he was in the lineup. Brazo was out. And then if you want to even add Patrick,
don't you dare forget Patrick Brown.
Patrick Brown. I was going to forget him. And if you want to add Potter in there because he's been in Providence, for a long stretch here in between his runs, then you can add him. But that's a lineup that, I don't know what you guys think. It's a lot of Providence guys, and they did a good job against Ottawa. Now, I don't know if Ottawa was just having like a really off night. Especially they had a really slow start. That's for sure. But yeah, like they were able to win with that lineup, and you got to think like, and I don't know how close McAvoy and Lindholm are, but they're closer than what they were, especially Lindholm. So basically, and Xerxes wants to, ow, he bit me. Okay. All right. So basically, maybe once they do get a little healthier.
Is that a minor or a major penalty?
That's a major penalty. This is at least the third time he's done this to me on the podcast, but yeah. So if they get McAvoy back and they get Lindholm back and Swayman turns out to not be that banged up, maybe they right the ship again. Like it could happen. And yeah, I'm sorry, he's trying to bite me again. So Brian, you go.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, I think that kind of dovetails into a little bit of what Scott and I were talking about last episode, which is, there's a lot of conversation about buy or sell at the deadline. And I personally think that the Bruins can sell off a few pieces and still make the playoffs, because some of those pieces I don't think are making or breaking their playoff chances. To your point, Bridget, they have a bunch of Providence guys in the lineup right now. And I think that you can potentially trade away somebody like Trent Frederick and still make the playoffs. Like, you can still find a way to be responsible with some of your assets that are currently under contract and not, not miss the playoffs. And then you can still have like a 15th or 16th pick in the first round this year. Do not, under any circumstances, trade your first round pick this year. I do not want to see that at all. But my opening shift has to do with Morgan Geeky, and he's one of these pending UFAs that ordinarily I would sit here and
RFA in this case.
RFA. Thank you, Scott. We'll just go with free agent. Take out the room for error there. But he's one of these pending guys that I would say get something for him. But right now, he really is a player that I'm seriously considering that the Bruins should potentially re-sign as one of their own among their free agent class. If they're to assign a few players that they want to re-sign, yeah, you can make the argument sell high on them, and I'd be, I would listen to that as well. But I'm watching him play, and Bridget's been saying for a couple of seasons now how smart of a player he is. And you know who else said how smart of a player he is? Was David Krejci last night on the Unobstructed Views. And
Me and Krejci, we think similarly. We do.
And look, he had a really hard start to the season, but since December, he has really, really pulled together his production on and off the score sheet. He's been very physical. He's been noticeable. Very evident chemistry with David Pastrnak, which is not to be overlooked, right? It's important to have players that can play with your top players. And I think he's fourth in team in scoring. So you can definitely make the argument to me he's one of the players that you'll want to sell high on. But he's young enough and he's performed well enough, I think, the last two seasons outside of the first 2 months of this year so far, where I would consider maybe, is he part of the problem or is he part of the solution? And I think the jury's out, but I'm leaning towards he could be very well part of the solution for this team.
Yeah, Geeky's a fascinating one, like, as we move forward this season. Because you're right, like, everything that makes him appealing to re-sign, like age, still some team control with restricted status, the way he's turned it on, even like the production is one thing, but the style of play where like he's almost playing like a power forward right now. Like the way he's forechecking, taking the body, like forcing turnovers with just disruptive plays. And then even you can just see the confidence, like when he has the puck on his stick. I think it would almost be natural to be like, oh, he's right. Like he's just doing what he did on his goal last night, which is Pastrnak creates and he just finishes. But when you actually watch the games, it's like, it's not that simple. Like Geeky's carrying the puck quite a bit. Really everyone on that line, I think, has had the puck on their stick quite a bit at times, which is why that line's working so well, because it doesn't have to just be Pastrnak doing everything and then getting it to his teammates. Like the Geeky and even to a little bit of a lesser extent Zacha have shown an ability to create some stuff too. So yeah, all of that makes a great case to keep him around and have him be part of the solution, as you said. It also makes the case for, like, his value is probably never going to be higher than this deadline. So, you could, like, if someone's offering you, like, first and third round pick, or like first and a young player or something. Like, if we're talking about like a real return, it's like, man, like that, it would kind of be tough to turn down too, because you do also have to wonder, okay, how much of this production is because he's playing with Pasternak, and is he a long-term line mate for Pasternak, or would you ideally have a better wing opposite him in the next couple years? So like that, those are all the like the discussions that the Bruins front office is going to have. And I think if we do continue to get closer and closer to this retool path, like I think you have to at least listen and see what's out there, because on pretty much almost anyone on this team, you should be open to getting blown away by an offer.
Yeah, I mean, if it's gonna be something that you can't turn down, like I don't really know what the ceiling would be though, because I feel like every team knows, like he's with Pasta, the production is gonna be there because him and Pasta have this connection that he hasn't had with anyone else in his career. Like, is it an anomaly because it's one of the best players in the NHL, or is he going to be able to lift, a similar type of scorer from another team? The combination sometimes just doesn't work. I mean, you could have this idea in your mind, and then there definitely is some buyer. I don't even know, like being unsure that this would be the same kind of fit on your team. So I feel like that would probably bring the value down at least a little bit, though his production has been good. And then just think back earlier in the season, we were like, oh, he's not showing up this year. Like in the early parts of the season when Montgomery was still here, we didn't have a lot of nice things to say. And it was just because he wasn't producing. And then it kind of turned into, he turned it around, and then Frederick was kind of the guy that wasn't producing. So, and those are two guys that you mentioned are free agents. I'm becoming increasingly of the mindset that Frederick is not going to be here after the trade deadline, because of his rental status, and because I think they know they're not making a deep playoff run this year. So like if they get somebody in return, it'll be someone that helps them make the playoffs, but not necessarily go on a deep run. It'll be someone that's not a rental, right? Because I think we're out of the realm where it would be beneficial in any way for them to have a rental in this bubble situation. Scott, I can see you're like thinking about it, but
yeah, well, no, you're right. Not for a rental, but it could be for draft picks or prospects. Like it doesn't have to be for a player. It doesn't necessarily have to be for someone who I short term.
I know. Or it could be a guy that's on an expiring contract, but they've made a commitment that they're going to sign an extension with you, like that kind of thing. But not your Bertuzzi type rental, and the way that they did 2 years ago. So yeah, I don't know. Are we starting off with trade talk?
It's not. I wouldn't call it trade talk. I would call it like having a conversation about, a real conversation about where the team, should be going this year. Because, last night after the game, what did I say? Following the Bruins win over the Senators, Boston is 6th in the Eastern Conference in points, 11th in the conference in points percentage. They're 3rd in the division in points, while 6th in the division in points percentage. So that just illustrates why everybody's brains are in a pretzel with this team. Because if you look at points, they're a playoff team. If you look at points percentage, they're not. And so it's a classic, what do you do? And I think I'm not really interested in having trade talk right now, but this is the reality of the state of the team. You have some pending UFAs. You have a team that, one thing I hear a lot is just get into the playoffs and you never know. And, look at the Blues in 2019, look at the Panthers as an 8th seed when it knocked off the Bruins a few years ago. And there's other examples as well. But the one thing that all of those teams had that this Bruins team doesn't have is a true number one center. I am all for an 8 seed going on a deep run. But in my opinion, just my opinion, that 8 seed has to have specific ingredients that the Bruins they don't have. They don't have that true number one center. And if you're not going to have that true number one center, you have to have true talent on the wing, more so than just David Pastrnak to help make up for that difference. So, I just see a team that really is stuck in the middle here. And I do think that they need to sell off some pieces, and they might still make the playoffs. But my opening shift was basically, backtracking, saying they have to sell off some pieces, but should Morgan Geeky be that guy? I think you and Scott kind of took it to some of the other players on the free agency list, but Geeky specifically, I'm kind of torn on, because it really does depend on the return that Scott mentioned. What's a potential return, right? That's everything. But Bridget, you mentioned how we weren't very nice to him earlier this year because of the lack of production. It was more than just a lack of production. It was the effort level. And I'm not somebody who will strictly criticize somebody if they're not scoring, if the effort is there. When I don't see the effort, that's when my eyebrows start to raise. And to your point, Bridget and Scott, his effort outside of the scoring, I think Scott called him a power forward. He absolutely has been very noticeable on the forechecks, kind of like in like a way that Mark Kaslick has been doing most of this year for the Bruins. But now Morgan Geeky is doing it as well. And a player that can forecheck like that can produce when he's on his game like this, that's a player you want around at the right dollar amount going forward. But does that outweigh a potential return on the market? And that's the $1 million question. And no, I'm not totally interested in talking about just trades, but this team is in such a pickle right now that it's hard not to talk about, because every game that passes, if they get 2 points, management's probably less likely to make some to sell some pieces. So there's fans out there that big picture probably didn't want the Bruins to win last night. And that might sound taboo, but they're coming from a good place. And it's a very tricky spot this team is in right now.
I saw that on Twitter. I think someone was replying to you, Brian, saying I wanted them to lose, but I'm not there yet. I'm not at that point yet. I think they're right there. You could still claw your way into the playoffs with the spot that they're in, which is why this conversation is going to continue to come up as we approach the trade deadline, which is still over a month away. So it's going
just to clarify real quick, I also think that they can make the playoffs and still do the right thing and sell some pieces. Can somebody honestly tell me how much worse this defense core is with, Callahan or Billy Sweezy trying to get to the 8th seed than, Carlo turning the puck over every 2 shifts? Or honestly, there's some players in Providence that you can call up in absence of certain players that you sell and still crack an 8th seed with 30 games left.
Yeah, I think the issue there is if you sell off pieces and don't also bring someone in, which kind of gets to what I talked about last episode, which is you could sell off, identify guys who you don't think are part of your future over the next 2, 3, 4 years, sell those guys off, but you could also potentially go acquire guys who you do envision as part of your future. I think the risk in only doing the selling part of that and then just backfilling with Providence guys is it sends the message that the front office has given up on the season. And they won't say that publicly, and they won't even say it to the team. They'll never admit it, but that's what that action tells you. It says, we don't believe in this team. The season's over. We're looking to the future. And yes, you can say players should be motivated no matter what, and they shouldn't let that affect them and all that. But it's human nature. If you see your boss do something that says, holy crap, he doesn't believe in me, it's kind of human nature to not bring your A game every night.
But Scott, play that out for a second. What that would hinder their chances this year, but what would the long-term effects of that be detrimentally? Truly, and think of a guy like Brad Marchand right now.
I'm only focused on I'm just saying you said they can make the playoffs even if they sell off a couple guys, and you're right, they could. I just think it becomes unlikely just because the vibes just change so much.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. But one thing I think of right now is I think of a guy like Brad Marchand. Okay. And you can even talk about Pastrnak and McAvoy because they've been on some really good teams too. Carlo as well. But think about Brad Marchand. he's sitting in that room. He's been on the Bruins since 2009, 2010. He's been on a Stanley Cup championship team. He's been on a team that's gone to 2 other teams that have been to the finals. And he's been on 2 other teams that were President's Trophy winners that didn't even go to the finals. And he's been on other really, really solid rosters. Brad Marchand knows when he looks around a locker room when a team is missing what it takes to win. If you don't think that the players in this room that have been around know what's up, then, it's – I'm not talking about you guys, but they know what's up. Now, Parker Wotherspoon, somebody who's in his first year and a half of the NHL, he's probably, a blind optimistic in that locker room. And Brazo, because it's their first cup of tea. But the guys that are in that room that know what it takes to win, they're looking around and they're saying, we are a couple of key pieces short. It's probably they still have to go to practice and play every day and go to the rink and skate every day. Like, they can't stop competing. I'm not saying that, but if you gave them some truth serum, they would probably know, like, yeah, it's probably not the roster right now.
Yeah, I don't know. I might not be so sure of that. I feel like I've encountered and like heard from lots of pro athletes who like legitimately will never be able to like see their team's weaknesses. Like, that they will always think they have a chance. And like, I don't know which Bruins are and are not like that. I actually think Brad Marchand might be one of the ones who is. Like, I think Brad Marchand might believe until the last dying breath that they have a chance. I just think that's kind of the way he's wired. And so you're right. Like, he's been around long enough that like he should be able to see it. Like, intuitively he should know, but something about just like pro athletes just don't think like the rest of us. And sometimes they don't think logically. Like, they always, so many of them always think the fix, the hot streak, everything clicking into place is right around the corner. Like, I don't think Brad Marchand is someone who's wired to like look around and be like, man, we just don't have it. Like, I think Brad Marchand's wired to be like, if we just fix this one little thing, if we just really commit defensively every day, we're gonna have a chance against anyone. Like, you know what I mean?
I do. Yeah,
I think that's very likely.
I do, but when you're bottom third in the league in every category, like, again, it's just complete blind optimism. Then, like, he had Bergeron and Krejci
fair.
for years.
I just think a lot of athletes have that. They have blind optimism.
That's true, and maybe that's why management needs to, have a different lens and have a little bit more self-awareness. And this kind of goes back to our conversation of like, it's in management's best interest right now to make the playoffs for their own job security. And I think ownership, they want to make the playoffs, contender, pretender, anything in between. Cause why wouldn't you, right? It's a very fan-based argument to be like, you got to see the forest of the trees. This team's not good enough, because fans were kind of, painfully honest. But there's a lot of self-interest at play here, and there's a lot of interpersonal relationships from the top down in an organization that make these hypothetical scenarios that we talk about really tough to actually do in real time. It actually takes a lot of cutthroat personalities to make some tough decisions. And I am totally aware that like these might not happen. But anyway, yeah, we kind of got off. It's tough to not talk about the state of the team, because honestly, to me, it's more important than, their game against the Devils or the game against the Senators. I'm not going to let this team, despite the strong effort last night, tell me that, yeah, they're going to contend for a Stanley Cup this year. Why should I believe that? They're a bottom third team in every team metric. They're out of the playoffs on points percentage, and they're missing some key guys in the lineup right now. There's 32 games left. There's a lot of reasons why I would sit here and say, like, I'd rather know for 32 games that this might not be their year than to know it for 82 next year or the year after. Like, to ask fans and the organization to kind of buy in right now and lean into what they actually are and stop trying to pretend, I think is far easier to do right now. There's 32 games left. Just rip the Band-Aid off, make some tough choices. Maybe you still make the playoffs, but at least you're doing the right things. And I just don't want this team to stay pat and try to sell to the world that they're a contender if they go out and get a middle six forward for a second round pick, or God forbid they trade their first round pick. Like, my God. So I just want the team to be. I'm the biggest Bruins fan there is, and I hate to not watch playoffs, but I want this team to be as good as they can be. And right now, look at all of their metrics. They're not a good team, and they're skating by with extra games played in hand on other teams, and it's tricking people into that they're a playoff team. But in reality, right now, until they're a playoff team on points percentage and comfortably, I'm not buying in this team, and there's only 32 games left.
Yeah, and I just looking at like their team goal differential, it's second worst in the Eastern Conference. The Penguins are the only ones with the worst goal differential. It's like that would not have been something that I thought we would be looking at when we started this season, because we're talking about how defense and goaltending are their strengths. And that's been not that offense has been an incredible strength, but like that's been where they've fallen short of the bar, is defensively and in net. And I understand like players and people, because I have some hope myself, but thinking that if Swayman just gets hot, they make the playoffs, and like it's anybody's game once you make the playoffs. Like if Pasta keeps going, if that top line keeps scoring at their pace, holding their end of the bargain, maybe Potter starts to get something going on the second line, and Swayman starts playing better, and you get McAvoy and Lindholm back. Like, is that the recipe for how you make the playoffs? Like, I think logically you could say, yeah, that sounds like that would work, right? Like that's even with Elias Lindholm underperforming, and even with some guys being out of the bottom six forward group that like Kastelik, like you could still see that being a path to making the playoffs. And then you got a hot goalie or a hot Pasta, and you ride it. That can happen too. So I understand the optimism that still exists. And I understand the pessimism because we're recording this after a win. But if we had recorded this after the New Jersey Devils game, I think the tone maybe would be different.
The only distinction I'll say, and I know I might sound like a grump right now, but I wouldn't call it pessimism. I would call it realism. Like I'm not being pessimistic about the Bruins. I'm being real about what they've been. And if you look at their team numbers and their individual statistics, I'm not being pessimistic. I'm judging what I've been watching for, almost 50 games now. So yeah, that's how I feel about it,
You know what kind of sucks? And like this is almost like a total aside, but this is like one of the crazier it's shaping up to be one of the crazier playoff races in years. I mean, how many years have we talked about like, wow, the Eastern Conference playoff field looks set like 2 months out, and there's like very little excitement, or it's just like two teams battling for the last spot. And this is like legitimately 6, 7, maybe 8 teams battling for wild card spots and even third place in the Atlantic. And in Boston, like and I'm not even blaming us, but like we can't get excited about it. Like we're all like, yeah, kind of just hope they fall out actually, and like get it on track for next year. And meanwhile, like all these teams around them, like Columbus is thrilled to be in this race. The Ottawa, Montreal, like they are so pumped just to be sniffing the playoffs. Like I mean, Rangers are probably a little different. They probably feel more like the Bruins, but again, like I'm not even saying like we're wrong to feel the way that we do. It's just like I find myself kind of like lamenting that we're not going to. It's going to be like this crazy playoff race, and we're not going to enjoy it at all.
Yeah, and it sucks too, Scott, because it's about trends, right? There's a reason why there's different emotions in different cities. Like the Senators, the Canadians, the Blue Jackets. These are teams that, to your point, they haven't sniffed playoffs in some cases, I mean, once in the last 10 years. And but they've had to endure, the shitty years in the standings, and they've gotten some higher draft picks. And by the way, I'm not saying that Bruins should do a full rebuild. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is, these teams, they've been bad for a while, but they're seeing a team that was down here and that they're trending up. We're seeing a team that's up here, but that they've been trending down. So to me, it's that not all playoff races are created equally, because it's about the trend of the team and the organization. And yeah, here in Boston, we've seen 17 playoff runs in the last since 2000. We've seen a lot of playoff hockey in Boston. We're spoiled, very spoiled. Good, bad, and different results. And because of that, I think we're able to see, when a team is, a contender, a pretender, or it might be best to just kind of like maybe miss. But I just want to reiterate, I'm not even saying that I want them to miss. I don't want them to trade their first round draft pick at all. I just want them to be responsible with some pending free agents. And if they find a way to still make the playoffs, like, I think that's the best of both worlds. I just don't want them to pretend and try to, piss on everybody's, feet and tell us it's raining, that, they're going to go out and be buyers at the deadline. Like, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Saying that. I've never heard that. Did you make that up?
Well, maybe I may have said, I think it's piss on our heads, tell us it's raining. I've heard it before.
Yeah, I've heard an iteration of that. Yeah, I think we're on the same page there. Like, I'm not. I guess I won't completely take the first round pick off the table, because if you're telling me I need to use it to get like Elias Pettersson, like, okay, I'm interested. But like, yeah, like, so short of that, like, definitely
Sure.
not.
Yeah, I would co-sign on that too.
Yeah, I think we're all like more or less on the same page of like, yeah, you're not trading premium assets for short-term solutions, certainly not for a rental. I am definitely open to the idea of buying on someone with term who's going to be here more than just the rest of the season. But yeah, like, I also don't think you can wait. I also don't think you can just stand pat and, hold on to everyone and then like let Trent Frederick walk in free agency. Like, if he's going to be gone next year, move him now. So yeah, like absolutely.
If my option is the Bruins have the 14th overall pick in the draft, but they miss the playoffs, or they have the 16th overall pick in the draft, but they make the playoffs, like, yeah, I mean, take the 16th pick and make the playoffs. Like, I'm not trying to be a Grinch about it. I just don't want them to be irresponsible. That's all.
Yeah, because there is also value in like Patra. Patra has no NHL playoff experience. Lohrei has some for last year. He could use more. Swayman has been a starter for one postseason. Like, getting him a second, like, all that stuff helps. I think we saw that in like the build up through 2017, 18, leading up to the 2019 run. Like, those guys getting their feet wet, even though the team certainly wasn't in position to make a deep run in 17 or 18, like, there were benefits to being there. So, hopefully there's more young guys who maybe get to be a part of that. And it's not just Patra and Lohrei, but we'll see.
Okay, so still on the table though this month is they have to finish strong, right? If they're trying to, if they're, which it is, it's their goals to make the playoffs. Again, my fear is that because they're in the playoff hunt, that Sweeney just doesn't do anything. But I can't control that. Nobody else can. So I guess we'll see what happens. But as far as, what lies ahead of them, you still have Colorado this month. I don't have their schedule up, but I know that they still have some tough games ahead here.
Colorado's on Saturday afternoon matinee.
Yeah, and then they have Winnipeg, which that did not go well for them last time they played Winnipeg. And then they have 2 head-to-head games next month against the Rangers before Four Nations, which, like, because of where those two are in the standings, could be really important because you'd be stealing points from each other. So you're gaining ground a little bit more when you're taking points against those teams that you're going against, because that means they're also not getting any that night. So yeah, those are going to be two important games. And then mid-February is when we hit the Four Nations. So that's
I
when
can't wait for that.
Yeah, me too. I'm getting ready. I mean, I really hope Charlie McAvoy is healthy enough that he can actually play in it. I've been kind of like getting worried about this as things inch closer, because I mean, they kept saying, "Oh, McAvoy should be back after the weekend," and like, here we are. It's Friday.
Well, hold on, wait. Let's be fair. That's not what Saka said. He said he would be reevaluated after the weekend.
It's
So, like,
okay.
that,
Maybe I was just reading into it that it was more of an optimistic, hey, he'll be like, we're gonna see if he's doing better, and hopefully he is, kind of thing. But yeah, like
yeah,
we're getting
I
into
mean, reevaluated doesn't mean like we think he's going to be ready to return. Then, like, I think they've been pretty consistent of like there's no timetable, but I do think he's. Well, maybe I shouldn't say, but like I don't think it's long term. I don't think it should. I don't think it'll hold him out of Four Nations. Like I think he's going to be back before then.
and like selfishly, because I want that tournament to be really good, like I would like to see him play in it. But I bet, like as a Bruins fan, you maybe just want him to take, like if he's actually banged up, like just take a rest and not play in it. Like that's that double-edged sword. It's like I want to watch Team USA at it, like at its best with the talent that's from Boston, because it's going to be in Boston, but also like rest could be beneficial for certain
Yeah,
people.
I was gonna say actually we have an I didn't pass this along to you guys, but we have an email that actually makes perfect sense to answer here from your biggest Aussie fan, Carly. So shout
We
out
have all the
Australia.
fans. Yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. She asked, "Are you concerned that Marchand or McAvoy will be injured in the Four Nations, or Sway to a lesser extent, considering what happened to Poitras last year going to World Juniors? Um, Also, is there some relief that Pasta isn't playing?" And I just dropped my phone, but anyways.
I'll go. So I'll answer first. Pasta, I know for Pasta, he's not happy at all that he's not playing. Like like it every time it gets brought up, he's like his mood just completely drops because he wants to be playing. He loves playing international hockey. And for good reason. Some of those guys are his best friends, and in the past, like him getting to play with Krejci and Yager, I'm sure was a great experience for him. But I mean, I guess, yeah, but that means, like, what are the teams going to be doing, like, in the meantime? Because there's a majority of these rosters are not going, right? Like this is a really small portion of people's rosters that are going to be playing and actually getting game experience. And if you look at the World Juniors this year in college, Boston College was, they took the entire break off. They didn't schedule a single game for them. The first weekend back, they did not look like themselves. They hadn't, 3/4 of their roster was not in game action for about a month. I know this isn't quite as long, but they end up losing a game to Merrimack. That is a team, I'm sorry, Brian, that they should beat. That's where Brian went to school. But so, like, I've seen it this year very recently where, guys getting time off is actually not a good thing. And, maybe, but here's the thing, like, yeah, maybe your first game back isn't good, but maybe then eventually shortly after that you're okay. So for Pasta, sure, maybe resting him at this point in the season is a positive way to look at it. Swayman, I don't think is going to play much.
Yeah.
So he's the third goalie.
I don't think he's going to play at all.
Yeah, he's a third goalie on that team. So he's kind of just like having fun, going about his day the same way he would really if it was like a Bruins practice or, because he's probably not going to play. And then the people that you really have to worry about would be Marchand and McAvoy. So, and in particular, because of the injury to McAvoy that already exists. And I guess Marchand was dealing with something coming into the season, and maybe that, rest could help. I don't know. I think that's a conversation every team and every player is, having. And you can make the case for everyone. Like, do you think Oilers fans are thrilled about, like, McDavid playing extra hockey that's not for their team? Like, I don't know. Probably because they're Canadian.
I mean that the Florida Panthers have the most number of players going. They're already a team that has had 2 long seasons into June the last 2 years. Like, if anyone would have wanted this break, like it would have been them. So yeah, I mean, all things considered, like the Bruins actually have fewer guys than most there. Yeah, I'm sure it's a concern for every team that has guys going there, but everyone's in the same boat. Like, just I think every team has at least one player going, and everyone else is going to be on break during that time. So everyone's going to come back with the same amount of rust. So it's a concern, but there's nothing you can do about it. Like you just hope your guys get through it.
And this time next year, we're going to be having the exact same conversation because it's the Olympics. So actually, more of your guys will be gone. Like I know I'm so excited for this, but same conversation comes around every Olympics. So.
Yeah, they're building the arena in Italy, right? I think it's still under construction. That's going to host the games.
The only rink they have there right now is super small. So in the Milan area, it's not even technically in Milan, but yeah, they definitely need a bigger rink.
Yeah, I mean, you guys kind of hit everything there. I think McAvoy's pre-existing injury, I would be a little bit more concerned about that. But a lot of players are probably dealing with something behind the scenes. If I'm a team, an NHL team that is playing really well and are trying to make the playoffs, that you don't like stopping momentum, but the schedule is what it is. You can't do anything about it. As far as individual players in the Bruins, you guys hit it all on the head. Maybe Elias Lindholm has a strong tournament for Sweden and he gets some confidence going. I don't know.
Yeah, you could even say the same thing for McAvoy. Like, we've talked this season how he's needed to pick up his play at times. Like maybe this tournament helps him do it, right? He's on a team along with Canada that's really the co-favorites. McAvoy's going to be playing at least top 4 minutes, probably top pairing minutes. So, maybe it helps him elevate his game and like kind of get to the level where it's like, oh yeah, I am one of the best defensemen in the world. And I can do this at this level.
Speaking of Jeremy Swayman, what is the latest on his ailment that kept him out of the lineup against the Senators?
Yeah, so Joe Sacco said before Thursday's game that it was minor. He said a little bit of an upper body issue, and cautiously optimistic for Saturday. I will say that as we're recording this late Friday morning, I saw Mark Diver tweet out that Michael DiPietro was already back in Providence for their practice Friday morning. So I'm going to be heading over to Bruins practice right when we wrap up recording. So we'll see if Swayman's at Bruins practice. But it sounds like all signs point to him being back Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was unfortunate that the Allmark Swayman matchup that people wanted, neither of those goalies were in the game with Bruins Senators on Thursday. And I saw them talking to each other after the game. Like they're such good friends, and I'm sure they would have loved to play against each other in this situation, but yeah, kind of stinks. I know there's still Allmark fans around this area that I'm sure would have wanted to see him play again.
Definitely.
Is he going to be back in time to play? Like, who knows? Like, is his injury going to keep him out of Four Nations?
Markstrom was the other one, right?
Sweden suddenly has multiple issues because Jacob Markstrom sounds like he's going to miss it now, based on the reporting Friday morning. Looks like Sweden's looking for a replacement. They do also have Philip Gustafsson, though, so who's been having a great season in Minnesota. So
wait a minute, are they going to take Korpisalo?
Korpisalo's Finland.
Oh yeah, you're right. Finland. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
I always get that one wrong for some reason. For some reason, to me, he's Swedish. I don't know. He's Swedish at heart.
Yeah, I can see that.
I don't think that goes over well with Finns.
I
don't think you ever want to call a Finnish person Swedish at heart.
See, I'm Swedish, so I think it's a compliment.
I feel like Korpisalo has that Swedish look. He's got the blonde hair, the blonde facial hair. I feel like a lot of Finns. That's like the quintessential Swedish look is the blonde hair. Maybe that's what it is, Bridget.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. All right, so we gotta get Scott to practice. So are you guys all set? Are we good to go here?
Yeah. This was like a very rogue episode, but sure. We have to go.
A rogue episode for a rogue season.
The other thing I was gonna mention, and there'll be more time to get into this, but Flutic Zhao did have an article on The Athletic Friday morning. I think this went up where he quotes an unnamed executive on another team, asked about the possibility of the Bruins trading Marchand, said, if they think it'll help the team, all bets are off, which I guess just isn't, it's not surprising that would be under consideration if this season, goes south and they do choose to sell or retool or whatever you want to call it. But, I think that's the first time like anyone's really kind of said it out loud, even though it is an unnamed person. But just found that interesting. Like Fluto, I guess Fluto, is kicking off the discussion there on potentially trading Marchand.
That would have been quite the opening shift, Scott. We should have led with that one. That's a lot of meat on that bone.
There is.
Yeah. I mean, I think like if the Bruins sell wisely and they use their cap space in the summer, maybe they hit on a draft pick or two. Like if they come back next year, a competitive team again, like even more so than this year, there's a side to me that you want Marchand on that team. You want him on a retool as a top 6 option still. But if there's an overwhelming offer and Marchand isn't giving the right signs that he's going to resign, then you got to explore it.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the contract extension. Like at one point, someone reported that it was done, and it clearly wasn't. It's not happened yet, and he's on an expiring contract as well. We should have mentioned him when we were talking about, Geeky and Frederick and those guys that are on expiring contracts. But
yeah, he's really like such a unique situation. It kind of, like his own category just because of his status, which ties into something that I'll tease, which is sometime in the next couple of days, either over the weekend or maybe Monday morning, I'm gonna publish like I think I'm gonna call it like Bruins retool tiers, just kind of looking at like the different situations of players I'm basically gonna go through like the entire roster of like who's in what situation, who can move, who's unlikely to move, so people can keep an eye out for that. And I do have Marchand as his own tier because he's kind of a one of one situation here.
I also just saw on Twitter, Anthony over at Bruins Network tweeted something that Frank Saravalli said, which was, I do believe that the Boston Bruins have kept very close tabs on the JT Miller situation, a team lurking in the weeds right now to try and monitor those prices. I mean, for what it's worth.
Yeah, I mean, makes all the sense in the world. Like I feel like I've been banging this drum for a while. Like you need a number 1 center. They don't come around often. I know Miller's older, but if the goal is to contend again in the next couple of years, like JT Miller is signed through, I think it's through 2030. So that's not a rental. That's not a short-term thing. That's, looking for the next several years looking ahead. Like, yeah, they absolutely should be involved. And like I said, you have to at least do your homework and figure out, okay, what is the situation that is leading the Vancouver Canucks to potentially trade such a good player and a player that has been cited as like the heartbeat of that team at times. You have to make sure there's nothing there that you're uncomfortable with. But as long as there's not, like, yeah, you have to at least be monitoring and talking and looking at what that's going to cost.
Yeah, I guess that shoe still hasn't dropped, even though we've talked about this. It's like 3 weeks ago. I feel like it's been a while now.
Been about a month at least, yeah. I mean, the Keefe and Pasternak stuff was in Martian was already like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I feel like the Miller Pedersen conversation was like even like weeks before that. I mean, and look, when I talk about on this podcast like the Bruins this year and like what they should do and their playoff chances, I can't operate under the lens that they're just gonna pull away a first line center from an NHL team, right? So like if they were to bring in JT Miller, that would completely alter how I look at their team and how I look at their their approach this season, and it would change things. If that were to happen, different discussion. Until something like that happens, I'll operate as I have. But it just because that's an ingredient that I talk about that every team needs, whether it's a first seed or an 8 seed. You need a true number 1 center. If the Bruins had JT Miller, okay, now you have a true number 1 center. You got a true number 1 defenseman, a true scoring winger, a true number one goalie, and surrounding pieces. It's a totally different conversation.
And then what, is Elias Lindholm your third line center?
He's my first line center in Providence. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, he probably. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, maybe find a spot for him on the wing, or maybe he's a third line center. I don't know. He wouldn't be my second line center. I mean, it would be Zacha probably. Or
I mean, Elias Lindholm's your third line center right now. Like,
Yeah.
where I'm at on that is like he's got to earn his way back up. Period. Like that's
Yeah.
you know, if other centers are playing better than him, they stay higher in the lineup. If Elias Lindholm goes on a tear and starts playing really good hockey, all right, let's consider moving him back up. But yeah, he's gonna have to earn it regardless of what his salary is.
And one knock on him has been people have talked about how his speed hasn't seemed to be very evident as he's gotten a little bit older. He's not really not a speedster, right? But you know what? And yeah, that obviously helps this day and age to be in a above average to elite skater compared to your peers. But David Krejci was never that guy, and I'm not saying that Elias Lindholm has the same skill set or could ever be David Krejci. All I'm illustrating is David Krejci was a guy who was not the fleetest of foot and was able to find ways to, dictate the game around him and slow it down at times. And because he was very smart. Bergeron wasn't the fastest guy either. So you don't have to be Connor McDavid's speed, but for whatever reason, he's not really imposing any elements of his creativity offensively or to this point in his Bruins tenure. So we'll see if that can change. But alrighty. Thank you all
last thing. BUBC weekend.
Yeah, BUBC.
If people are looking for some great college hockey to watch, and if BU pulls off a sweep, we're doing 45 minutes on it Monday, and if BC sweeps, we're pretending it never happened. So
I will say Saturday is a great hockey day on NESN. So we have Bruins at 1:00. My broadcast at 4:30. It's UMass Lowell against PC. That should be a good ranked matchup. And then BU BC at 7. So full day of hockey on NESN. If you're interested, you can definitely tune into that.
And a shout out to Bridget for broadcasting the women's Beanpot final at the Garden. Was that your second time, Bridget, doing that?
Yeah, this is our second year doing it. Similar crew. It's the first year. And I hope back for more, hopefully. I think we did a good enough job. I don't know. People put in the comments, "Oh, you sucked." No, no, I think it was good.
Very good.
That was Brian.
No.
Yeah, that was Scott.
No.
Yeah, we're not talking about that result either.
BU did lose.
Bridget did a great job, and there's nothing else worth talking about. From that game.
Sounds good.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you very much for listening. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll talk to you again on Monday. Hey, guys. Thanks for watching the Skate Podcast. If you want to see more of our videos, visit our playlist.
Not in front of a screen? You can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Don't forget to follow us on social media. And if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment.